All right, you're good to go, Kathy.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the April 7th meeting of the Finance Committee, and our focus at this meeting is the school budgets, elementary school, regional school, and conservation and development. After I call the meeting to order, I will be doing that by making sure the members of the committee can hear and behold. If we have a quorum of the council as well as the finance committee, Mandy Jo Haneke will call the council to order. Right now, I don't see a quorum. Um, so I am going to call on people as I see them on my screen and just indicate whether you can hear and we can hear you. Lynn,
Present.
Sam,
Present.
Jill,
Present.
Kathleen,
Present.
Anna,
Present.
and I don't think I missed anyone. And so Mandy, right now, I don't see a seventh counselor.
There is not. I'll keep monitoring it. In the meantime, I'll turn off my video so that it's clear that it's not a council meeting yet. But if we get another counselor, I'll raise my hand.
Okay, thank you. So for starters, I want to thank the school team for a very thorough response to the questions we sent in advance. So rather than going through all the questions, I'll open it up for clarifying questions, but I first would welcome you giving an overview of the situation as you see it. And I see we have with us Dr. Z, the superintendent, the director of finance, and uh, Tonya, you have to give me your title. I'll get it wrong. But
Director of Curriculum.
and Deb Leonard, who is chair of the school committee, the elementary school committee, the district committee. And we will be turning to region after we do elementary. So Dr. Z, I'll open it up the floor. And by the way, public comment will be at the end of the meeting today to make sure we have time for a discussion. And for anyone who's listening and for everyone who's in the meeting, we are not making any decisions today. We are doing our best to gather information to funnel into the final meetings of the Finance Committee where we will deliberate on our recommendation to the council. So any information that would be useful to us that we didn't already ask for, we'll try to identify. But as we do this, we did the schools early. This is the first week we're doing budget reviews. So there'll be time if we didn't ask some questions that we should have asked. So I'm turning it over to you, Dr. Z, for just to make opening comments. And we didn't tell you in advance we would ask you to do that, but the floor is yours.
I think if the assumption for me is to always be ready to speak. So I first of all, good afternoon to the Wonderful Amherst community, and I would like to thank the Town Council FinCom and the Town Council members, Paul, our town manager, and Sean for your support in this process, and for just having the opportunity to come before you and speak about our wonderful school system and the budgetary situation that we are in. I know that you indicated, Kathy, that you wanted to start with the elementary, but I wanted to ask if it would be possible for us to start with the region first.
We can do that. I see Sarah Bess has joined us. I didn't see her initially, and Sarah Bess, Sarah Bess Kenny is with us, and she is chair of the regional school committee.
Awesome. To the community today, I just wanted to start off by saying how we know that there is a wide casted net of support around our schools and educating our students. The nuances that go into educating a singular child is not one that's often well explained. It's not one that we can easily delve into because every child deserves something different and our system has to ebb and flow to meet the needs of our students. It's really critical in this conversation that we not just tie our programming to funding, but we also talk about the deeper and I was very appreciative of the questions from the town council around really trying to dive into the whys and the hows. It wasn't just about what, it was about the whys and how, so that there was an actual understanding of what it is that we do each and every day when our educators walk into the rooms, when we walk into our offices to make sure we can educate children. So today, myself, Shannon, Tanya, accompanied by our chairs, and I'm truly grateful to our school committees, are here to speak on behalf of our students and our children and to advocate for funding to make sure that we can adequately educate them.
And you said you'd like to start with the region.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I thought that I would just go through a very brief, short overview of the budget and then turn it over for questions.
The questions.
Okay.
So I will just share my screen. And this information was in the document that we sent. I just pulled out a few of the pictures for this. So right now we are requesting a total budget for FY27 at the region of 38.8 million. We have utilized 850,000 of school choice in this budget. And we've also already applied IDA funds and circuit breaker. This budget right here already incorporates the reductions that we stated we were going to make and other shifts and additions that we had to the budget. So we had an increase within salaries, and that's partly because of the salary, the steps and COLAs for staff. We've had an increase in our substitutes, and if we look at the prior year history, our substitutes has been much higher. So we did an average for that. Our special education expenses, non-payroll lines, has an increase, and we are anticipating 3 potential residential placements. We also had an increase for our out-of-district placements and for van transportation for those out-of-district placements are just as much as the program cost itself. We have an increase within our other programs, which is our Charter Choice and VOC. There was an influx of 9th graders in FY26 for VOC schooling, so we accounted for that in the next fiscal year, and obviously the increase to Charter and Choice. We've had an increase within our within central administration, and we made an average amount, or looking at what we've paid for attorney fees over the past few years, and increased based on that average. We also had an increase for our software costs, and some of our audit costs have been higher. So that's really the driving force behind here. We did go through every budget line thoroughly, so you'll see some smaller decreases within other areas, such as IT, and we were able to reduce some of those expenses. Facilities, there is a larger increase here. We actually were able to decrease some areas, but for the unfilled trade positions that have been sitting within the salary line for a few years, we took that out of the salary and moved it into the expense lines because we're already paying for the contracting. So the money was there, it's just in a different part of the budget. So it's not necessarily an add here. We took it from the salaries. And then we're entering year 2 of our transportation contract. So there was an increase for that. And then, of course, as you all know, the health insurance increases that are here. And we did a deep dive into our insurance of how many people do we have on which plan, and to make sure that that was as most accurate as possible, given how high those percent increases cost the ultimate budget. So on the next sheet, this is our revenue page that you've seen. This was the same thing that was presented at the last 4 towns meetings, so there was no change. We had an initial operating budget of just under 40 million. After a $1.1 million reduction, we're down to the operating budget of 38.8 million, which was on the prior page. We've made assumptions for Chapter 70, transportation reimbursement, Medicaid charter. We've increased our interest revenue given the past few year trends. We've gotten a small amount for homeless and foster care reimbursement, so we added that within our revenue as well, and then an increase from our E&D on here. And then it comes down to the assessments for the towns. So right here where it says assessment required would be what is needed from Amherst, Pelham, Lever, and Shutesbury to support this $38.8 million budget. And these assessments percentage increase are right here. Because we had an overage of over 5% from when our E&D was certified at the end of FY25, the overage of $151,000 could be used to reduce the FY26 assessments, or could be voted to be used to offset the FY27 assessments. And so after discussion with the school committee, we voted to reduce the FY27 assessments for that year only. However, this amount here in this blue column is the base going forward for FY28, but you're paying slightly less because that money will come out of E&D and ultimately reduce us back down to where we need to be. So that was no changes for towns. And then this is a summarized version of what we presented at for Townsend to the school committee of the changes that we made to make this budget happen. So we're utilizing many different funding sources in the budget adjustments. This section right here is not reductions in people. It's just a change in funding sources for certain positions, and then applying our best estimate for rural school aid, using some of our revolving funds to support the summit teachers, some of our grant funded funds, etc. And then we have our budget additions with looking at the current needs of FY27, what we will anticipate needing for additional staffing to support those specific needs. Then we come down here and we have our actual reductions of positions that we would reduce. But like we've mentioned before, there are no actual people losing a position within these reductions.
Shannon, can I ask you just to pause for just a second, because another counselor's joined us. So we're now a quorum of the town council is here, and Mandy can call it to order as well.
Thank you, Kathy. Seeing a presence of a quorum of the town council, I'll call the town council portion, the joint portion of the meeting, to order at 3:13 p.m. And I'll just go through. I can hear and be heard. Councilor Cano-Martin, can you hear and be heard?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, Shannon.
Point of
Continue.
order. I thought Councillor Lord was here as well. Maybe she dropped off, but
I'm not seeing the full screen on it, so there's
here.
thank you.
Thank you. I missed you. Sorry, Councilor Lord.
No worries. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So that brings us down to meeting the required reduction of 1.14 to that you saw on this previous reduction or revenue page right here. So then just a really quick thing for capital. Nothing has changed in our capital request. I wanted to just bring forth what the FY27 projects were that we would be asking funding for, and it's the same thing that we have already presented. And then our capital budget, the debt assessments for each one. So it is higher this year, and that's mainly caused by our debt assessment for the middle school roof and the track and field project. And then had we not had those projects, it would have only been the $318,000 here. But with those two larger projects, it has increased the debt assessment for each town. So Amherst is at $761,000. You'll notice Pelham's is much lower, and that's because Pelham decided to use cash to support the middle school roof project instead of participating in borrowing. So an intermunicipal agreement was signed by all four towns and voted and approved by the regional school committee. So with that, that was just a very brief overview, and I'm happy to take questions with Dr. Z and Tanya.
So, Kathy, we're here. Councilor,
Yeah.
Andy Joe. I was like one person I know is two. We're here to answer questions on the region, as well as with support of our chair. Her camera's not working well, but she is
I
present.
am here.
She is here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I apologize for the camera situation. I don't know what's going on.
So, Kathy, we're ready for you point of view.
Okay, so as people saw in the packet, we just had a few questions of the region. The first, and clearly this is a next year decision for us, but we would normally, whatever we're paying this year in the FY27 budget, that would be the base, the starting base for FY28. So whatever is being asked for FY28 would be off that base. And I think you've been assuming that it would be the higher base because of the use of the excess E&D this year. So as you saw, we've never quite been in a situation like this, and I think one of the questions we asked, you don't know the final Chapter 70 money. You don't know the status of rural aid, which was the uncertainty last year that helped you get over the 5%. So I think it's uncertain what the base, what next year will end, but it was more to let you know that in our budgeting, this year actual would be the base for next year. So it was partly a statement and realizing that I think that's not quite how you're carrying it. So that was one question. Then the other, I think I saw it just answered in the elementary school budget, Chestnut Academy. It shows some of the staff would be a shared staff where the elementary side is picking up a share. And I had asked, when we wrote the questions, we asked it as revenue to the region, but you're showing it that is a $197,000 reduction for you, which would be the right way, that elementary is picking that up in their budget. Is that correct? That you've already accounted for what is showing in the Chestnut Academy?
Yep, that was already accounted for in meeting the 1.1 reduction. So it's under budget adjustments on that sheet that I had up where it's not reduction in staff, it's just a different funding source. So those pieces are being funded out of the Amherst budget.
Yeah, no, I had missed that 197 when we asked it. Then the other question was Dr. Z, sorry.
I don't want us to get too far from the base conversation because I feel like this was that conversation should have taken place with all four towns present because that would actually adjust the assessment method. And so I think that in essence, we truly need to have that clear understanding that the $20,555,001 is actually the assessment for Amherst. The E&D, it all depends on what you do with it. If you pay us minus the E&D reimbursement and you keep it or we reimburse you, the base for next year based on the current assessments, and Shannon has been saying that from every one of the four towns meetings, that is actually a base, the $20,555,001.
We could, Mandy.
Yeah, just a clarification on that though. It's my understanding that the town has no option as to whether to receive that excess E&D in cash and utilize it any way we want. That it is something that the region is using to reduce our assessment without us being able to say, actually, cut us a check and we'll pay the full assessment. That's my question number one, that I want to clarify what you just said, because it almost sounded like you were saying, well, we're choosing to reduce our assessment by the excess E&D, but it's not the town's choice. It was the region saying that that's how they were going to do it. And number two, I just wanted to clarify, I believe both Amherst and at least one other town at a four towns meeting did question what the base would be when this E&D use was done at a four towns meeting. So I just want to say, I know I at least said that Amherst would consider the lower number the base at a four towns meeting. And I just think that needs to be said here.
Yeah, so between DESE and the Department of Revenue, there's a formal memo that's written and posted on their website that if the school district is in excess of E&D over the 5% threshold, there are only two options. You take the current year and you like for instance, for the town of Amherst, the $120,000, we could have said on our last quarterly bill for the assessment and reduced the $120,000 from that, and you would have only paid whatever the current assessment is minus $120 in that last quarterly payment. Or we could then take FY27 and this is your base. This is what we're reducing it by because we're in excess. So when we were to fill out our E&D certification at the end of the fiscal year, we have to put in the budgeted amounts for assessments, and that assessment amount would be $20,555,000 and change. And then when you only pay $20,434,000, that's how it gets hit against the E&D, the difference between those two numbers, showing that we did in essence give money back to the towns. So I personally think if we were going to further discuss this, that wasn't the base, that we should have had that conversation with all 4 towns present, because I do believe that question was asked and I had stated that was the base, but there was no other further questions about that at that time.
We also had that conversation at, and I recently had that conversation at Leverett and talked about the base would remain for next year. So so it goes back into the financial planning of the town and knowing that it would either be a larger jump or percentage. I see my chair has her hand up. So Sarah Beth?
Yep.
I think, Dr. Z, we are saying the same thing. I was also at the annual Leverett Town meeting last weekend, and they were the other town that questioned about how to use the excess E&D. And when they voted for their regional assessment, they voted their assessment number, their $1,941,652.
So my suggestion is we move off of this because there's clearly, we will have to resolve this, including with our finance director, and it doesn't affect FY27 is the other point. So I have one, Lynn.
This is not on that issue. This is since we all met for the 4 towns meeting, I believe there's been a supplemental and/or a vote that includes money for various parts of school funding in the millionaire's tax, which was part of the supplemental. I assume that you have not incorporated that into this next year's budget, but at some point will.
I believe once it comes to us and we're notified, we can, but we have not received any official notification as yet.
Thank you.
So, and I think Lynn's point is it's potentially additional revenue that's not yet been budgeted. So my question is the out year debt on the middle school roof, and you answered most of it. The middle school roof bids came quite a bit lower than initially anticipated that were built into the debt. And so at what point will you know how much? Because I think you had a supplemental for some other equipment. And will that show up in FY27 or is it not till FY28 when you know finally what the cost is? So it's a timing question. Yeah.
Yeah, we won't know the full cost of the project until the project is completed, what that final number will be. The amounts that Regional School Committee voted, I don't remember the date, that was for the base award, but they don't need to vote the sub awards. So I think for Silktown, it was a little over $5 million. That is not the cost of the roof. That's just the cost of the base bid.
Okay. And then I guess my final question, and we didn't ask it because we hadn't seen the amended regional agreement language that Sarah Beth spoke briefly to, the $100 a year per room wording has been removed in the revised language. Is there going to be new language that says how a rent will be determined, or is it going to be a case-by-case basis? What is the plan? And the immediate issue is going to be whatever is being negotiated or discussed around the Chestnut Hill Academy?
Chestnut Street. So,
Chestnut Street, right?
so in terms of the language, and what's happening currently with the lease, I'll answer both. The lease that's being drafted right now is being drafted under the current regional agreement language. And so that is under what we currently have. The regional agreement language, that is being edited is more than just $100 per classroom. That language or that singular clause is being brought into compliance with the law, giving the regional school committee the authority as per the law to enter leases, enter into leasing, whether it's to be the leaser or the leasee. Also note that in the current regional agreement that is gravely outdated, one of the 4 towns also has approval. And if this is a 4-town regional agreement, it should be really in the hands of the regional school committee. And so what we were tasked with or looking at was bringing that language into alignment and up to date. And the discussion for opening the whole regional agreement to bring it up to date. We attempted to, and I'm sure the conversation was to bring portions of it up to date with this singular amendment, also to make sure that the current government structure of Amherst was reflected. There was some breakdown in communication between the attorneys. However, with the opening of the full regional agreement, I'm sure all of that will be covered because there are various parts of our agreement. I've been told by DESE that it's out of compliance with the law. It is outdated. So it's not just about the government structure. It is also about us being in compliance with the current law as a whole.
Mandy?
Yeah, are we allowed to do my questions on the proposed regional school agreement? And I didn't know if that was something that we were asking questions on now.
Yes, but
Okay.
you know, I know I opened it up on a lack of clarity on what does this actually mean, and it appeared to open up the, delete one line. I realized there's more than just that wording, but there wasn't
Yeah.
anything on what basis rents would be determined. So go ahead, Mandy.
But if you're okay with asking questions about that, I'll go ahead then. I have 2 questions, actually. The first one is, it sounds like the new lease for the Chestnut Street Academy does not require a change in the regional agreement from what you just said, Dr. Z. So if that is the case, why is this modification to this section being pursued now as a standalone modification instead of as a part of a opening up of the full agreement? So that's question number 1. And number 2 is there anything preventing the town of Amherst from waiting to address this agreement, this amendment request until the full agreement is opened up and proposed to be updated so that we have all the rest of the amendments in front of us too?
Sure. My first, when I brought this forward in reviewing this and working with our partners to develop the lease or to review our regional agreement, I will tell you what the concern was for me. The concern was for me is not just the cost of the $100 per classroom, but is the fact that the approval sits in one town versus all 4 towns. And in actuality, it should be the regional body sits as its own municipality. And so the lease, the school committee, I asked the school committee to allow me to craft the current lease for Chestnut Street under the language while we work to amend the singular portion to bring it within compliance in terms of the approvers. In this current situation, what you would be facing is where Amherst would be approving a lease that is entering into on its own with the regional school committee, as per the current language. That to me serves as somewhat of a conflict. And so we wanted to clear that up and moving forward. But in regards to your second question, I can't tell Amherst what to do. So if you choose with all the information we put before you, looking at what's in front of you in terms of the fact that this is a facility or their facilities that are actually under 4 towns that you've trusted a regional school committee to make the best decision for in the interest of the children and of those 4 towns, but you still feel like the language should be halted, then that's your choice in this matter. My recommendation would be to move forward. We've already had the conversation with DESE. We've already said that we will be reopening the regional agreement. It is actually on the agenda for the 12th at the region to discuss how the regional school committee would like to approach this, whether they're going to do a subcommittee, whatever they're going to do. I think that this is a long-standing conversation that needs to happen amongst the four towns and more so amongst the regional school committee in terms of the language. But I just don't see the equity or equality in having one town be an approver.
So I understand we get to decide what we want to do and you've got your own position, but I was more asking on that second question that there is no legal, to your knowledge, once say 3 towns vote an amendment, a time frame for within which all 4 towns must adopt it for it to be adoptable. That if the school committee, I'll give you an example. If the school committee voted whenever they did March 31st to make this change and send it to the towns, there's not a legal time limit where if it's not adopted by the towns within, say, a year, it would need to go through the whole process again, to your knowledge, such that we could choose to wait as long as we want, maybe for the purpose of waiting to see what the rest of the changes are and voting all the changes together without jeopardizing the votes of the other 3 towns, to your knowledge.
So the one thing that I do know, I'm going to say one thing that I do know. What I do know is it has to happen within an annual town meeting. The town of Amherst does not have annual town meetings anymore. You have your council meetings. In terms of the time frame and the extent for the language, I cannot tell you legal frame because of all things I don't do. So I can say that I will refer to our legal counsel and ask that question and share it back with you, whether it's through the chair or not. And I see Sarah Beth has her hands up.
Sarah Beth.
I thank you. I'm sure there is a time frame. I don't think it's like 30 days, but I'm sure there is an expiration date on those motions and votes to have it come back together. I think, like Dr. Z said, we can confer with legal counsel and Desi to see what the time frame is, but I don't think it's a forever.
So why don't we say that's a question that we'll get an answer to, Mandy, before Amherst has to make a decision. We have time. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, I think at this point, unless anyone has any other questions on the regional agreement, we're turning to the elementary school. I'm not seeing any hands. Lynn.
My question is not about the elementary school or even the schools, but I wonder if we should just acknowledge now that we are not going to get to planning conservation today and make sure that the people who are sitting here waiting for that stay tuned for when we will meet with them.
Sean, do you want to confer with them offline just since we haven't started elementary yet?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we spent a half hour on the region. Do we anticipate the elementary is going to be an hour and a half?
Oh, yeah.
It could be. I'm just saying, I mean, right now we're on pace where we could get to conservation and development at the rate we're going. But if we think the elementary schools are going to take an hour and a half, then we could let them know when they can come back. There's not an obvious time for them to come back. We're pretty packed with our meeting schedule, but.
So I'm seeing we have at least 3 people there waiting. So let's table that for right now, Lynn, because let's see whether we can be efficient.
Maybe we
Anna.
make the call at like 4:10 if it seems like we're deep in it.
Anna.
Thanks. And I hope my question isn't too tiny here. One of the responses in the document was about staffing and tracking staffing levels. And I was trying to understand the response in that document that said it's a manual process. And I understand that has caused a lot of challenge in terms of getting those numbers. We also got comments that those numbers were not accurate or weren't true to the experience of the folks in those positions. And I know that what you said is because it's a snapshot at any given point of time, it's kind of hard to line those up. But what I didn't see was what the plan was for moving forward there so that accurate information could be presented. You had mentioned that other districts utilize software to track this, but that there wasn't a plan for us to do that. I think it seems pretty important that everyone's on the same page in terms of the numbers and the staffing counts for FTEs. I'm just curious what the plan is moving forward. It wasn't clear to me from that response.
And Anna, can I ask, are you talking about the elementary school or?
Yes.
Yes, you're talking, we've switched to elementary, okay.
I thought we had. Did we not?
Yeah, no, we have. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying, Kathy. I just wanted to pause because I wasn't sure if we're still under region. But I also didn't know if we wanted to have Shannon walk through the elementary budget portion before.
That would be
the
great.
questions
Kathy
were-
had said no hands were up and I panicked and put my hand up and because I was like, wait, no, don't end this. But it would be great to get an overview first and then I'm happy to re-ask my question later.
All right, awesome. So I'm gonna hand it over to Shannon to ask the question, and we can delve into a lot of our processes and how we're trying to work to update those. Shannon, you're muted.
Sorry. I only have 2 pages for the Amherst budget. This summary page looks a little bit different from what you might be used to looking at. We have adopted new cost centers for the Amherst Public School District, so it's a little bit more detailed within the payroll and expense account lines. So this budget, we've obviously had increases in salaries for our SEPs and COLAs. We've had a significant increase within special education for out-of-district placements and contracted services that we can't do in-house, and transportation costs for out-of-district placements. We had a big decrease within the facilities line, and that's partly because Fort River and Wildwood would be coming offline, although there are some utility costs left for the summer months of Wildwood since our summer programming will be happening there. This negative number would actually be more, but like in the region budget, we had moved some trade positions that have gone unfilled into the expense lines, which increases facilities, but it's not an increase to the overall budget per se, because it was just a movement from payroll to those lines. We've had the increase in health insurance. And like I said, at the region, we did a deep dive into what plans staff currently have and just trying to make sure those projections were as tight as possible. So that's just very brief overview. This budget is an increase of 5.87 over the FY26 budget. And with that, the reductions that would need to be made are within this sheet. So at the top, again, we have budget adjustments. These are not, this intensive needs admin for ILC is not a reduction in a position losing or being lost. Actually, this person is shifting to a little bit more of a region role, so it's on a different budget. And then we're going to utilize a little bit more of our school choice funds. And then we have additions to the budget, which some of these support Chestnut Street Academy. Not all of these are for Chestnut Street Academy. I noticed that in one of the memos. And then some of them are just adds to what we see the students' special education needs would be that we had to make some adjustments for. Down here are the actual budget reductions. So we did reduce some lines within committee or within the superintendent's expense lines. We have a reduction of classroom teachers and non-program SE teachers, a reduction within custodial and psychologists, and a slight reduction in the ESL teacher. And so that brings us to a total budget of $29.9 million.
And Shannon, I would just point out that the manager's budget, as you and Dr. Shi pointed out in your overview, there's another 69,000. So instead of it being 572,000 above, it's 503,000. You know, there's more in the town target at this point. And because what the town manager did. So it's a nuance, but it's almost $70,000 worth. Mm-hmm. And the budget, I think everyone knows the budget that she just quickly went through is what was known when it was voted on as option 2, correct?
Yes.
Yes, the school committee voted budget. Sean.
I apologize if you said this, Shannon, and I should know this, but are all the collective bargaining agreements settled in terms of, are you able to project salaries based on a accepted contract, or is it still being negotiated?
There's one that has not been finalized and ratified. So
Okay. Is that Unit A or
Unit B.
Unit B? Okay, thank you.
Welcome. I think we wanted to, Kathy, I don't know, we want to go back to Councillor Gautier's question, Devlin Gautier's question around the FTEs, especially in SE, and our plan moving forward. We wanted to give her an opportunity to repeat her question so we can make sure we got it.
I'm happy to try to repeat it. It wasn't necessarily framed perfectly. When I hit multiple post-its is when you know it's going to not be
So
perfectly aligned.
I think your question was around, we presented one FTE number in terms of our budget. However, you've later heard from individuals that like the caseload and numbers may have changed. And we talked about it being a manual. I have some bullet points, manual process, but you want to make sure that we're talking about what our actual numbers are and how do we shift that process moving forward, right?
It was actually sort of, yes. And it was actually based on the answer to the question that was in the packet about FTEs, where you explained how, sorry, the number of documents. You explained that because you use a manual process, it's very labor intensive. And so there hasn't been a great way to get an accurate count of FTEs in any given area. And then you cited that other districts, I think you said either Ludlow or Palmer, uses software for this task or for this responsibility. But that I believe you said there wasn't a plan for us to do that at this point. And I was just curious if that's not the plan, kind of what is the plan so that we can make sure that we're getting the most accurate FTE counts that we can without a huge labor that it has been.
Yeah, so you are correct. It is a snapshot in time of when, depending on when the information is, reviewed. I would we're actually implementing a new payroll software that will integrate within Munis, and we're moving away from Frontline and having Red Rover instead. And I can't remember the name of it. It's WeBuild, and there's one other word that integrates with Red Rover that would provide that FTE data at any point in time whenever we do need to pull it. And as we use it throughout the years, it'll start holding that historical data in a much accurate way. So that's something that Dr. Z and I have talked about that we would like to begin implementing. We're hoping for this upcoming fiscal year that we'll have the Red Rover operational. And once that happens, then we can move on to the next phase.
I see Joanne Smith's hand is up. Is she also speaking to this issue?
I don't know. I think we answered
Okay.
Councilor Devlin Gautier's question. Because I think her question was, if we're not doing it now, how are we planning to move forward so we fix that problem? And so we're in the process of working with the new vendors to transition our system and then to make sure that this is something that we're able to address, because it's come up in our past 2 years, it's come up repeatedly around making sure we have that accurate picture at different snapshots in time. So we actually are building that in.
Can I ask a follow-up if that's okay, Ken?
Yeah,
if you want to go on, you can. It's related to this.
And I see there are 3 hands up on this as well. Councillor Connor Martin, Councillor Brebeck.
Wait, sorry, can I ask a follow-up or no?
Sure, absolutely. I said, yes, you can.
Oh,
Sorry,
I apologize. I didn't hear that part. So I'm glad to know that we're moving forward on kind of solving it. For where we are now, what is the accurate number? Where and how can we get to that? Because that impacts caseload. It impacts all of the kind of numbers that depend on the FTEs. So how can we know kind of what the most accurate information is in this budget?
So I think this specific issue points directly to our SE numbers, because I think that's the one specific cohort that's been the most affected. Joanne can speak to her processes and what we've done, but we have pulled the most recent numbers and rerun them. So we do have a different ratio moving forward. Joanne, you want to kind of speak to your process?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Kathy, is it okay if I go ahead?
Sure.
So just to share with you all, what ends up happening is, by the nature of special education and services that students need, services are determined on an individual basis. And when an IEP is written to reflect the agreements with the team, that is done within our database. We use a program within PowerSchool that allows us to have real-time data on services as reflected in an accepted IEP from a family. And so what we do is actually pull the data directly out of the system. So we have accurate running data 95% of the time, unless we have a move-in student that hasn't made it into the database. And so when the data was originally pulled, the average caseload for the non-district program students was 7 to 8. And then I understood there was concern expressed about an increase in numbers, and I believe there was some communication shared, maybe perhaps with this group, about numbers being upwards of 15 or better. And then I reran the numbers again, and as Dr. Herman indicated, the numbers had shifted a little, which is not unanticipated. The average range right now is about 9 to 10 students per non-district program special ed teacher at Amethyst Brook. That number is not atypical because the nature of special education is that it evolves and that it's not a stagnant when one point of the year. It's an ongoing process as needs are identified. And in terms of the 15 plus per staff member, when I looked at the data and I met with the staff, and I believe what happened is they didn't interpret a full comprehensive set of the data because they wouldn't have full access. I think perhaps they may have accessed a number of students with IEPs, but not all students with IEPs have academic services requiring a special education teacher to provide those. And so the 9 to 10 is the consistent average projected at this point.
Thank you, John.
And I see Amber, Drill, and Lynn. And let's try to be as brief as possible. So, if it's an unanswered question, we can get more later.
Yes. So my question is, and thanks, Joanne, for explaining that, because the council did receive communication from some of the interventionist teachers as well as some of the special education teachers. And we've been trying to get to the bottom of what the caseload will look like. So I appreciate that, that you're saying that it will still be 9 to 10 for special education. I guess my question is for Dr. Z and for the school committee. Do you feel that in the budget, the scenario 2 that you passed, that we will have enough funding to keep the caseloads for special education from 9 to 10 and the caseloads for the interventionists? They said the best practice is 4 per group for reading and 6 per group maximum for math. So do you feel that passing this scenario 2 budget will allow for that level of staffing that the teachers are recommending?
So passing the scenario 2 budget that the school committee passed at 5.87%, yes. The priority restorations, and we did include that in terms of our response to the council. As a district, we looked at our numbers and our current numbers. We ran our numbers when the concerns came forth. And in rerunning our numbers, we actually see that we should prioritize a regular ed or an SE teacher in our restorations. And so with that, we actually would say that the 5.87 would allow us to meet the needs and keep our ratios low, as long as we're able to restore those positions beyond what is currently projected of the extra approximately $70,000. That's only one position. But if we are able to get the position that the percentage that the school committee voted, we can keep our ratios low.
Jill.
Thank you so much. I just had it's maybe a little more of a process question, or just trying to wrap my head around the timeline as it relates to reductions, as there are several reductions relevant to this budget, and knowing where we're at in the budget process, and then seeing in your answers, Dr. Z, about the fact that reductions have to be notified or noticed by 4/15. Can someone just speak to how that fits in with the budget timeline? Because it feels like you're having to notice reductions while we're still in the midst of making decisions on the budget. So thank you.
Sure. Contractually, as per the collective bargaining agreement, we have until April 15 to notify of any possible reduction in forces, any risks to positions. That's Unit A and I believe Unit C. What we did in our budget development process is we developed our budget. As you know, we developed one based on town guidance. The school committee voted 5.87. We weren't sure where we would land in terms of percentages. So we looked at the full range and we issued reduction in force notices within the timeline. We also included a language that this is contingent upon budgetary as well as district needs. So in that language that was issued on each notice, we let them know that depending on what is voted and what the needs of the district are, that there's a possibility that positions may be restored. Our contractual agreement does not align with the budgetary process of the town, so we have to include that language, and that's not what I included last year, and we included this year. A part of that is, one, we want to give individuals an opportunity to amply find themselves, sustain employment in case we can't. And two, to make sure that we are adequately planning for the upcoming school year. Ideally, the town, you passed the budget the last year, I think we were notified in June. June does not give us enough time to actually plan for a school district in the upcoming school year. So that, unfortunately, we did have to issue notices based on a range of positions between a 3.85 and a 5.87, but we did include the language that this is contingent upon budgetary approval and the needs of the district.
Lynn, and then Sam.
Thank you. First of all, to all of you and Dr. Z and Shannon, I just want to thank you for all the work you've done to bring this budget forward to us and for the unbelievable lengthy response to all of our questions. That is not small, it's huge. And on the
Lynn, you muted yourself.
On the regional budget, you came in on the mark. On the elementary budget, you attempted to come in on the mark, and I'll get to some of those questions later. I want to go back to the issue of the software that you were talking about, Shannon, and I want to know whether or not it will allow you to go back in previous years so that we can get a comparable look at positions over time, no matter how you look at them. I mean, you can look at FTEs any way you want, and there's any number of ways to look at them. What would be most helpful for the lay people, I include myself in that, on groups like the Finance Committee, is to be able to look at them the way other municipalities look at them, and to look at them over time, even retro. That's my first question.
So the software, if we were to get that integrates with Red Rover, it would not be able to go backwards. That would be the beginning for moving forwards. I think the best thing to do is to look at the budget books historically, where those staffing trends are, and generally those snapshots in time should be close, because that's when the budget is being developed. That's the best starting point per se.
So Shannon, would that be FY27 is a new starting point? Is that the situation we'd be in? What Lynn is saying, so up until then, we're looking at those 5-year tables that you've had?
Yeah, so whatever software, if we do go with the software, FY27, yes, would be the first year with that implemented.
All right. I'm actually going to pause with that. Thank you.
Sam.
Thank you, Kathy, and I'd like to also thank Dr. Z and the team that put together the responses. I read all of them, and they were very helpful in explaining some of the challenges, and I acknowledge that there really are great challenges for the system. We have a new school, Chestnut, as well, and on top of that, budgetary problems. And although we're asking questions from our own perspective, it seems to me that we're doing it at a relatively surface level without actually feeling directly the impact of that it is with the school system. I gathered from all the different responses, aside from the finances, that the specials and all the discussions to date, that the specials and special needs are really driving a lot of the discussions and challenges. So thank you. Question I have that's particular is on page 26 of the Amherst Public Schools. There's the budget. I put an asterisk next to special education. Just I noted the variances in expenses from 2023 to 2024 to 2025. I'm curious, is that a typical, do fluctuations such as that typically occur? It went from like 641 in 23 to 383 in 24. For some reason, there was a big drop, and then 795 in 25. And I'm wondering, is there something systemic in that particular category in terms of how it's allocated?
You're looking at the budget, which
And the
I'm looking
expense
at
on the expense account, Shannon, under the expenses for special education, regular education and special education from FY23 to actual.
yeah, so it does fluctuate. Circuit, what we receive in circuit breaker every year is different, but we do know what that number is that we're using for the budget ahead of time. And then how much IDA funds that we have, which is also, we actually don't know how much IDA funds we'll have for FY27 until probably October, already into FY27. So we make an estimate that supports the budget. And then special education is fluid. We get move-in students throughout the year where they might come in with really high needs and we have to spend a certain amount of dollars, or they have to go out to a program because we can't keep them in house for some reason. So yeah, special education will always be a volatile factor of whether it goes up or down, all dependent on the student's needs. That can be very unpredictable.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems that it requires reactivity. And I gathered that from many of the responses that the school system has mandates to meet the needs. And the challenge being, what are the budgets going to be and how do you respond to those incoming needs? That also, the other asterisk I put down was a smaller figure, but it was the comment regarding the 3 to 5 year olds preschool, that there's a need to meet those, and that it's increased this year. I saw it in the questions. And I'm curious, and you responded that it was primarily an increase in special needs. Is that a percentage of special needs, or are we actually getting higher number of 3 to 5 year olds in our system? I'm wondering if it's a long-term trend.
I will ask Joanne, can you expand on that question?
Yes, thank you. I think that's a really important question. What we are seeing is it's trending up for the number of students who are 3 and 4 year olds who have been identified with special needs and an IEP. Our preschool program is primarily at its core designed to meet those students, and we include peers without IEPs. So we have an integrated program to meet state requirements. And yes, it is an upward trend. And relative to our ability to project, I think based upon our numbers that have been slowly creeping, I think we would look at this as a steady, where it would stay up at this number for a while. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I mean, I'm wondering if it be just by chance, or are we perceived to be particularly effective at addressing the needs of special needs in that age group?
Well, let me just say, first of all, I really appreciate that observation because I think we have amazing programming. But I would say to you, relative to the students that live in our community. And so I don't believe it's a moving in order to access our preschool program. What we're seeing, the trends, especially post-COVID, that the complex profiles of young people, young students, young children, is very much growing. Part of our larger systemic questions have to do is what are the other options? And some of the movement around IDA, the federal funds, I don't know if you follow any of that, but some of that really does speak to where there's at the federal government guidance to put more of the funds that are existed through the different parts into early intervention and less into 3 to 5-year-olds. So we're going to be realizing some realistic tension about how the federal government is leading some of the funding and thoughts around it as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I see Sean's hand is up, Mandy. So is it all right if I call him before I come to you?
Thank you, Kathy. I wanted to go back a second and clarify one thing. Dr. Z, you had said if the 5.87% increase was approved, that there was a prioritized list of things that might be restored. But, and I could be wrong on this, my understanding was that budget that was approved by the school committee specifically restored specials like art and music, art, PE, and intervention positions. Am I not understanding that correctly?
So the intent of the school committee at the time was to restore those positions. However, since then we've had conversations around restoration scenarios. And additionally, the school committee, along with the administration, is about serving the needs of students. And so if we're able to show them the accurate data and have the conversation around shifts that need to happen in the correct cost centers, I'm very confident that the school committee will ensure that the students who have the greatest needs have what they need.
Thank you.
Mandy.
So I guess I've now got two questions. The one is in response to Dr. Z's answer just now to Sean's question, which is if you've got a prioritized list of potential restorations and that is it not the same as what the school committee's was? And if so, can we see the prioritized list? That's question number one. And question number two goes to the preschool program. Are the high needs students that are enrolled in preschool, i.e. the ones that are not required to be served by the school district, is the tuition they are paying covering the full cost of their preschool costs? So is the school district charging tuition to the non-mandated, I'm not sure how to word this correctly, the kids that are not, that the school is not required to provide preschool services
Can I help
to?
you? Are you just
Yeah,
asking
and is the tuition they're charging
charge?
to those students covering the full cost of their preschool education?
Shanna, who do we charge tuition?
So we charge non-special education students. So if they're there for special needs, those students are not charged. We take in approximately 35,000 a year for preschool tuition. That probably covers one para. But we also have to pay teachers and paras that are dealing with the special education students, and they're in the same classroom. So
no, I guess I understand you have to pay for the students that are not the special education. Well, there are costs associated with the special education students that are fully covered by the school district. I'm curious whether the non-special education students' tuition covers the cost it costs the district to educate them in the preschool. So is the non-special education preschoolers' tuition and attendance cost neutral? Or is it still an added cost to the school district to include those students?
I would say, without doing a formal analysis, which it seems like perhaps that's something that might be asked of us, but I would say no, it's not covering it all. But then the question becomes, if we cannot have our preschool program and do these services in-house, how much is it going to cost for us to contract to send those students elsewhere or to pay for a tuition program at another school district? And is that the trade-off that is why we keep our preschool open and complete those services?
I think Mandy is trying to get at if you could charge a higher fee for the non-IEP. Because it would, if you just take 30 to 35,000, that's not when you look at other preschool programs, people pay a lot for preschool programs. So do we have a sliding scale for the non-IEP based on their income? I know it's a lottery to get in. Yeah.
Shannon, you wanna I'll have Joanne just give some context and then you jump in, just so we could pass the ball around. Go ahead, Joanne.
Yes, so it is a sliding fee scale for the students. And one of the pieces I think it's important to understand is with the sliding fee scale, we firmly believe in early intervening and intervention so that when we have students come in, that we're giving timely tier 1, tier 2 from a Massachusetts tiered support approach with our preschoolers. And then the other piece for us is to maintain what we would consider competitive hourly rates or fees for the year, because we are mandated to have what we consider peers without IEPs in our programs to ensure that we're in compliance with the state requirements. The other mitigating factor that Elizabeth Burns, as a preschool administrator, also takes into consideration is that our programming, unlike some other programs, may run longer hours to meet what the other families may need. So it is a continual evolving conversation about how do you balance meeting our regulatory requirements with also meeting what our community needs, with also covering the costs.
Kathy, I didn't want to go too far from Councillor Mandy Jo's first question around the restoration. And then I wanted to kind of tag team that response between myself and the chair. So on page 11 of our packet, we actually submitted the same restoration priority list that we submitted to the school committee. So if you look at page 11, there is a chart. Note that when the school committee votes, they vote by cost centers. And so they are able to appropriate by cost centers. In those specific cost centers with the additional funding, we are able to adequately, as you can see, because it's by cost center, determine what the needs of the district are and restore those positions. So the idea is that the school committee votes the overarching budget by cost centers and says, hey, this is where we would like to have things appropriated. When it comes back down to the specific how it looks within the district, that's where the superintendent and the district team would look and say, hey, what are our current needs sitting in front of us? And as long as we are not crossing cost centers, we're able to implement the positions. So for example, if there's a higher amount of regular education or regular instruction, and I noticed that we're switching back and forth between terminology because we were cutting and pasting and working on this document. So we apologize for the mix up, but they're the same categories. We are able to determine that if we actually need a general classroom teacher to teach 5th or 6th grade, then we are able to hire that over restoring we're able to restore that position over restoring a specific specialist position. So that's where my explanation earlier was around if there is a need for us to then ask the school committee to switch cost centers. I am sure if we come back to them and say, hey, we actually need to hire an SE, like 2 SE teachers to make sure that our students have services, we need to change or we need to increase a cost center, then I'm sure the school committee will do such. It's been a collaborative conversation around the needs of students. Deb, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think when needs change when the school year starts or in the middle of the school year, we need to adjust staffing appropriately. And I think we've done that pretty successfully. Not optimal. You should be able to know who's going to be in your classrooms day one, but we don't have that kind of contingency built in.
I see Amber, Councillor Cunningham.
Kathy, can I quickly let Rob and Jeff go? I think I was going to see if Dave and Stephanie want to hang on because I think they'll be quicker. But planning and inspections will take longer, so we'll bring them back at a future meeting. So Jeff and Rob, you can sign off, and I'll connect with you on another time.
And Sean, if they could come on next Tuesday, I think we can make general services.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Okay. Amber.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if somebody could clarify what are the positions that will be lost in if we pass the town manager's budget as opposed to the school committee budget, approved budget.
That is the list in here, Amber. Okay.
So
Okay.
if I can clarify, so on the sheet that I presented where it said budget consolidation reductions at the bottom, it would be those positions plus the,
Page 27.
yep, it would be those if we did not receive the additional 572. I guess the idea was that the specials and the interventionists would be restored, so those positions would not. However, based on the cost centers, we can restore what the students need the most for that 572.
Lynn, and then Jill, Mandy, Deb.
So I'm going to stay with this just because I don't want to keep jumping back between early childhood and the elementary budget, but I still had questions on the early childhood. But on this, so what you're saying is that you are already saying that if the council ultimately does not increase the school budget, that you are committed to these would be the positions that you would eliminate from the budget that you actually presented us, which is the budget the school committee voted. And the reason I say that is because technically you're not bound by that. Technically, we pass a number and you decide how to do that and how to use that money.
We are sort of bound by it at this point because we have contract requirements that require us to reduce and force, send those notifications out by April 15th. So if we were to change the plan now, we would be out of compliance with our contracts.
Okay. And at the same time, what you're telling us, because the superintendent did present the initial budget that was within the guidelines of the financial guidelines that the council passed and gave to the town manager, that these positions have already been given notice.
They've been given notice with a statement that talks about its pending budget approval as well as the needs of the district.
Thank you. I just want to be very clear which positions we're talking about and the amount.
And
at least
one of them was retirement, Lynn. So, some of them, yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to my other question on early childhood. I just find it unfortunate for the superintendent and the staff that we keep jumping back and forth.
Jill.
I have a question back to closer to Amber's. Does anyone else, but I'm happy to turn it over to anyone who wants to continue on this line of conversation.
So I think I had a clarifying of what Lynn was trying to do, if that's okay, Counselor Brevick. So I'm going to ask Lynn's question a different way. You referred us to page 11 of what I believe is the document that's like ASC answers to Finance Committee or something like that in the title. Finance Committee ASC, that you said page 11, which has a list of 3 regular education, 4 special education, 2 regular instruction, a support services, and then another regular instruction specials list for an FTE total of somewhere around 14 positions, and over about $1 million worth of cost. And so am I correct in saying that those are the positions that have been noticed as an RIF, and that if the town council would vote a budget above the 3.875, those are amongst the positions that might be restored, but because the number is well above $500,000, you cannot tell us at this time which of those positions might be restored. So it might not be the regular instruction specials that are restored. It might just be one of the of 4.5, it might be regular education or special education that are listed above that. Is that correct? That it would come from that list, but it might not necessarily be the interventionists, teachers, the last 4 lines of that list. It might be the first 7 lines of that list.
You're correct in that assumption, but note that we're saying based on student needs. So we are a public school district. Our needs ebb and change. One of the earlier questions that I believe Counselor Devlin Gautier asked was about the ratio, right? When we first ran that ratio, when you initially started this process, it was much lower. When everything came back up, we reran the ratio. It was now about 9. Right? So our needs shift and change. Students are being assessed every day. Students are being reassessed every day. So even today, what our needs may be may not be what's projected here in terms of our priority restoration list. So for us, also noting that some of these positions may be due to attrition, that we may have lost someone due to retirement or whatever, and if you ask me what the ideal is, you say, if you tell me, if you have a blank check, what would it be? Here's what I put. So it would even exceed, the amount does even exceed whatever it is that the school committee put forth, because it's like, if I had to restore, this is what I would restore. So don't send me shopping. I'll do well. I'll do well shopping. What I also would say is that, yes, the restoration, even on this list, may shift and change, because what do our children need? And so our numbers are shifting. And just for your edification and that of the community, we work with our school leaders. We listen. We heard the voices of our teachers. We went back, we checked, we saw where the shift was. We're willing to make that change in the restorations. And that's what we need to do to make sure our children have what they need.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that we can't know now what would actually be restored if we increase the budget from what the manager proposed. That would be, this is not for you. This is for the rest of the council. We don't control that restoration. And just because some members of the community are saying one thing, that is not actually possibly what would actually happen. It would be up to you to make that decision based on whatever funding is available.
And I would say that what I can guarantee you is that what I would restore is what the children need in that time. And also noting, like, our school year started with one set of needs, right? We had everyone moved and placed at the accurate positions at the start of the school year. Quickly, as the school year took off, we had individuals move into the community. We had individuals move out of the community. We had to move individuals from one building to the next, so we didn't have to hire. Then we still had to hire 3 or 4 additional individuals. Like, we are a public school system. We cannot say no. Our doors are forever open. So what I can say is that with the funding that we need and that is on the higher end, we're able to make sure that we can provide for our children.
Thank you.
So Deb,
I
Counselor
had
Brabek, and Lynn. Yeah.
one observation about early childhood that I think might be helpful when we come back to that. I just had a couple of points. It is not uncommon in my experience that RIF notices get issued when somebody ultimately does not end up losing their position simply because they need to be issued so early in the year. And as you know, Chapter 70 changes all the way up until June. So oftentimes there are a position here and there that gets restored over and over and over again, having gone through a May kind of June cycle. So I wanted to point that out. I'd also like to point out that I believe your budget is the same, Councilor Haneke. You allocate a certain amount to a department, but within the department, that's at the discretion of the town manager. We have worked recently and considered the cost centers, which are more fixed. The superintendent would have to come back to the school committee and require a vote to transfer funds from one cost center to the other. So we have looked into, Dr. Z brought it up in the fall, I brought it up in the spring, about really examining cost centers more carefully going forward. But that is the state that we're in at the moment. Thank you.
Jill, and then Lynn.
I just had sort of a follow-up question. I guess I feel like I am committed to trying to help find a way to fund and restore these special ed positions that I think are so important to interventionists. And I have a sort of a question about what made it into the budget scenario too, in terms of these other special ed, non-program special ed positions, and if anyone can shed light on why those 4 positions didn't make it into this budget scenario too, and if there is still any route to ensuring that those positions, as they fall into such a critical category of staffing, and as Dr. Z, you mentioned being dedicated to making sure we're meeting students' needs, those feel like critical positions. So I guess if, just so that I understand process-wise what happened there, why are those positions not in the school committee approved budget scenario too? And is there still a route to restoring those positions?
And I'll pivot it to the chair, just so you understand our process. First of all, and I kind of bulleted it on page 10 because I think that whole scenario was a part of a series of questions. The school committee process, or our budgeting processes, throughout early parts of the year, especially the elementary, we have meetings, myself and the town manager, as well as the finance directors. We meet regularly and we have finance discussions. We were provided guidance. We presented our budget based on the guidance to the school committee. The school committee this budget ultimately sits within the scope of the school committee because they set the general educational direction of the districts. Once they gave us the priorities that they had, and asked for additional scenarios afterwards, we developed those scenarios. The school committee received feedback from the community around what the community felt were important things to consider. And so they gave us some guidance around what they would like us to develop in terms of restorations and another budget. That's where the 5.87 budget came from the guidance. And so in our follow-up conversations with our chair, what we also did was determine to present for her in terms of what would be lost, where we would want to make sure there's restorations. Deb?
So everything's a compromise, right? And this year was particularly difficult because not only were we looking at reductions because of costs, not because of changing needs, but the consolidation process is complicated. It is time consuming. There's a lot of moving pieces. And as I believe we've witnessed, we don't have 100% or anywhere close to 100% alignment of the stakeholders in the conversation of what this looks like going forward. My own point of view is that under a consolidation situation, you make change gradually. I mean, we're already going to make large changes. It's not clear the implications to the educators or the administration, what it's going to take, what time and additional resources, including time, to kind of figure out the process, right? It's not gonna be a year, might be 3 years, I don't know. So I would be conservative in making any staffing reductions except the very obvious ones. But that wasn't the budget scenario that we were asked to present, and it wasn't the budget scenario that we would have liked to present. I think when I say we, I'm obviously speaking for myself because we didn't discuss them. We did do what was called a level services budget. I think it got 1 vote, but it was it's a reasonable thing to say. Let's not cut anybody until we really know what we're looking at. There are some obvious consolidation savings in consolidation when you bring 2 small schools together, exacerbated by the fact that we will still have commonantes within the school. So you really have a hard time separating, getting that kind of efficiency that you're looking for when you have 5 classes per grade, when you have a 2 class per grade set of classrooms. I guess what I'd like to say is, even with the level services, quote unquote, level services budget that could have been brought forward, that wouldn't have made sense because perhaps staffing, just the building itself doesn't require the same level of custodial staffing. And then you add on to that this idea that I lost my train of thought.
Lynn, I see your hand is up.
I know.
Oh, sorry.
You have additions, right? So the additional
Preschool.
you have the implied reductions for consolidation. But if you go back to that spreadsheet, Kathy, that you showed me, there was no expectation about what the additional staffing for Chestnut Street Academy, Sixth Grade Academy would cost. So you're increasing and decreasing, and it doesn't mean it's level services because you have an entirely different service situation you're delivering. You have a very small sixth grade academy, a medium-sized school, and a kind of smallish Crocker. And I don't even know what to call that. We're increasing preschool by a class, early childhood. That's not a small thing. And that has nothing to do with the consolidation process. That just has to do with the demand that the needs of the 3 and 4 year olds that are living in our town. Thank you.
So I see Lynn's hand is up, and I'm also conscious it's 4:27. And we do have public, and we still have Stephanie. We have a couple people waiting patiently here. So Lynn, I am calling you. I'm just, if we can also say if there are some questions that haven't been posed yet, given how fantastic your answers were that have come to us, we can, if you're willing, we can send them to you, post this. But Lynn, go ahead.
So I just want to make sure I understand. If, for example, the Chestnut Street Academy in the fall ends up at a lower level, one of the decisions you could make is that you have a higher level need elsewhere, and maybe you won't have as many classrooms at Chestnut Street Academy. Of course, on the other hand, you have to honor the fact that you have to have the ratios as provided for the Comanantes program. So that's the kind of decisions you make based on student needs. So as we sit here today, we're not necessarily voting this level for one and this level for another, et cetera. You're going to make decisions based on needs. That's what I think we have all been hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Second of all, what I also am hearing is that with regard to the specials that have been kind of at the center of this back and forth between what level should we fund the school, is you assessed at one level, that was, I believe, 7 or 8 on the average. Other people who are in those actual classrooms saw it in a different way, counting it differently at more like 15. Your reassessment came back at more like 9 to 10. And so the reason I'm asking that is because it seems to me that somewhere in there is possibly where we're looking for how we could come up with a compromise. Okay? That's what I'm trying to come to.
I want to clarify, you're speaking, what you referenced in your example or question is actually special education and not the specials.
Okay.
The specials are the music art library. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, no, I meant special education. Yes,
Yes.
I did mean that.
Yes.
And thank you. Yes, I did not mean the specials. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that those were the different levels that got discussed in here. I really would like to go back to preschool, and perhaps this should be done in questions. I know that in Amherst, we also have Head Start. So I'm assuming that none of the Head Start money comes to our preschool. Is that correct?
Correct. John or Shannon?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Which is unfortunate. But nevertheless, because we also don't have universal preschool. But what I am hearing is that as an obligation to do preschool supported by the state program, you, even though you have a certain number of slots for special needs students, you have to still balance out the classroom to have it look and feel like an average population. And that's a terrible way of saying it, but so that the slots that you're looking to fill by lottery are slots that are not necessarily special needs.
That's correct.
Okay.
They're not special needs, yes.
Thank you. I think I've asked all my questions. Thank you so much.
And just, I think everyone saw, but in their budget, this is the preschool piece is adding almost $200,000 because of the growth in the IEP matched by the other group, which is, I think, why Mandy was saying is there's some revenue offsetting that when we have to increase the non-special needs parts of it.
Let me add on to that though, because one of my biggest concerns is as we go down this road, based on this threat of potentially having the income tax reduced, how much of that money for our preschool is in fact state money? And will that, we don't know, but that's the kind of thing that it could end up being in jeopardy if this state stupidly votes for a 1% decrease in income tax.
Shannon, do you have those exact figures, or do we need to get that back to the council? I feel like we need to get back to them with that exactly.
Yeah, you don't have to, I'm taking notes. There haven't been that many unanswered questions. There are just a few. Deb.
Hey, Lynn, tell us how you really feel.
You know.
Early childhood is an interesting situation. As you know, the cost of an additional classroom is 180 something thousand. So I wanted to go back to Mandy, Counselor Haneke's question about whether or not students are who are not in those SE seats, whether or not they're billed to cover their costs. It's we do have a sliding scale, but it's like having a mandated school choice position. So whether or not you have those non-SE students, you still have to provide the program. So that's one way of looking at how the costs do or do not cover the costs of the non-SE students in those programs.
But I think we have tended to fill up those slots, Deb. I know in some schools. Yeah.
Counselor Haneke asked if the fees that those students pay cover the costs of, and it's not a system for which that is inherently possible. I mean, you could do it mathematically, but the way the system is built, we would have to offer those seats whether or not anybody paid anything for them by state mandate. So that's sort of one nuance to the early childhood, and the other is if you actually look at the one of the updates that we've gotten, it's not, I don't think it's in the packet. The total ads for early childhood is more than 3, it's 5.6. So when you're looking at the budget, there's the net minus 10.35. But like I said before, you increase and then you decrease. So when you're looking at net dollars, when you're looking at net FTEs, it's a really much more nuanced conversation about distribution of resources amongst the groups. So that's what I wanted to say.
I'm not seeing any other hands up right now, and you've given incredibly graciously of your time, Dr. Z, and your team, where originally you said maybe an hour. So thank you. What I'm going to suggest is we only got a chance to get the massive amount of response you got. Many people didn't see it till this morning, and we have people who work, so they didn't necessarily focus, able to absorb it. So I will collect from people if there were unanswered questions that had occurred to them, and I have one, but I don't need to have it. It wasn't one we had posed, just to get more clarity. I think, unless I see any objections, we could close this part of the meeting. Is that all right with everyone?
Kathy, I'd just like to say thank you to you and the town council for the opportunity to sit and engage in this great discussion. I think that the one thing that I would take away from this, and I hope that everyone takes away from this, is that we're actually aiming this year, even in how we presented our budget book and the documents that we had, in making sure that what drives us is that programs drive funding and student needs drive programs. And we wanted to make sure that that was very clear across everything that we do. And so, thank you all. If there's any further questions, it's also the end of the school year. So there's a lot happening. We're opening a new building. We have a roof project. There's a lot moving forward. So give us some time. But also note that in this whole conversation that we had, there's data pieces that, for example, when the SE numbers came forward, there are data pieces that the teachers don't have access to, that we have access to, that prompts our numbers. We understand that it is iterative. We understand that it's a public school. And so even though we plan and have the best intentions, things happen each and every day that may shift where we have to put our funding and who we have to have in front of our students. And so as long as student needs and we center around students, for me, that's the work that we're going to continue to do. So thank you, and I'll await your email.
So I want to thank the whole team who came, and Sarah Bess, who's been sitting there patiently, saying, boy, I'm glad we brought in a regional school budget exactly on target.
I do want to say a huge thank you to Dr. Z and Shannon and their team for creating, especially at the region this year. It was a really thoughtful budget. They took a lot of feedback from last year and conversations during the whole year when presenting this budget. And so I just want to, again, appreciate how much work went into this. So thank you.
Well, thank you all. And so you can stay for the next part of our meeting if you would like, but you
No,
were totally
thanks.
willing to say goodbye. And Sean, I want to make sure we have time for public comments too, because we do have a fair number of public. And now we have Dave and Stephanie here.
Sure. Let me turn it over to Dave quickly. Again, he's not going to be around later in the month, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that we got to him tonight. So Dave, do you want to give an overview, and then again, we can just maybe scratch the surface of conservation?
Yeah, thanks. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I'm actually around next week, Sean. So as I was listening and looking at the time, there's some continuity and connectivity between all of this, between planning, particularly on the planning side. So I guess I'd prefer to hold most of it until Tuesday. We can start. Stephanie is here, and we can knock off a few of the questions up front. But
I was
there's a
thinking,
lot
Dave,
of
focus on conservation and sustainability, and then planning and inspections we would do next week.
Sure. Again, just for the finance committee and anybody listening, we have a functional area, conservation and development, which includes planning, inspection services, sustainability, zoning, and we all work together. We work also very closely with facilities, although that's in a different part of the budget. Obviously, right now, one of the biggest issues and one of the biggest projects we're working on is Hampshire College and the future of Hampshire College, working with the town manager, with our planning and economic development director, Jeff Bagg, who will join you next Tuesday. And then, of course, zoning is also a big topic, and we'll talk more about that on Tuesday. All the while that these projects are happening, we're also liaisoning and supporting committees and boards across across the spectrum of Amherst, from the CRC to the planning board to the Concom, and the list goes on. So all of that work is integrated, all of it is collaborative. So why don't we start? There was really only one question. Well, why don't I start with grant applications? Is staffing adequate to secure grants? So we'll just rattle through a couple of these early questions. Obviously, more staffing would be great. As Sean has probably told you, there really aren't any major substantive changes to the functional area in terms of our operating budget. So we're not expecting any more staff. So we're going to do the best we can with the staff we have. I will say that through the years, we've been extremely successful in getting grants, not only grants in conservation and planning and sustainability, but across the spectrum of Amherst. We work very closely with DPW on things like Mass Works grants, grants for roundabouts, grants for open space, obviously for sustainability, and the list goes on. We're taking a major hit this year. As you know, we just lost Nate Malloy, who was our senior planner for 18 years. I will say that in Nate's 18 years, Nate's keyboard was instrumental and his knowledge was instrumental in probably bringing in between $15 and $20 million in grants. Did he do those all by himself? No, he did not. He did those collaboratively with lots of other staff. But that is a major loss for the town. We are advertising that position as Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Development right now. So that'll be a really important new hire for Jeff and for the planning department. Do we help the schools? When we can, we do help the schools. I know that Stephanie can comment on this. Stephanie is always available to the schools. She has helped them on a number of projects, including some she can talk about in just a minute. Should we be working more collaboratively together? I think we should. Sean has mentioned in previous FinCom Finance Committee meetings about grants like CPA. We worked very closely on the project at Crocker Farm School for the enhanced playground, the preschool playground. That was really a collaboration between Crocker Farm, Becky Demling as the lead person at Crocker at the time, and Nate Malloy worked very closely to do that. So there's more opportunity. I think it really comes down to hours in the day, staff time, and how much, our benches are not terribly deep on either side. So we do what we can. We could do more. Stephanie, do you want to say a little bit about, some of the work you've done with sustainability across school and town?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, we've had some historic collaboration for things like EV infrastructure, the charging station, the dual EV level 2 charging station at the middle school was something that we secured, one of the initial stations that we installed, and we secured that with funding. And then the electric vehicle, the white Nissan Leaf that the school has, is also something that we helped the school purchase, but also through a fundraising campaign. In addition to just securing some grant funding, we also had a fundraising campaign for that vehicle. And then there's also been some building projects over time, lighting projects, motor retrofits, things that aren't particularly sexy to talk about, but they're small, but they're significant, that we secured through some green fund communities funding years back historically. So there has definitely been collaboration, and then there's just ongoing collaboration across departments that happens regularly for most projects.
And for people, there were questions submitted. So Dave, if we don't have to go through every one of them, but even if you draft some answers, but we'll put them in.
Thank you, Kathy, for reminding me. I got a little out of my flow because we
No,
thought we were
it's
going to
okay.
start earlier in your meeting. And without Jeff and Rob here, but we do have written responses. We'll get those to Sean tomorrow. So you'll see them end of the day tomorrow, and then you'll have them in time to ask us any additional questions for next Tuesday. Maybe I could knock off a few more, Kathy. Do you have time?
Absolutely.
Planning staff turnover. I'll just jump in on this because, of course, Jeff has only been here a short time. It says, you know, we have been losing staff to other municipalities. What are the challenges? So in general, in the functional area, you know, planning, yes, but in the functional area, we have been losing staff, and we've had quite a bit of turnover. I would say broadly, some of the threats there are retirements. We've been very fortunate to have a number of staff for a long period of time. People like John Thompson, some of the council members here will remember John Thompson as one of our longstanding inspectors. John retired recently, and that field, Rob will tell you, is just not churning out new staff. So it is very, very difficult to recruit new staff in inspection services. We've been a little bit lucky in finding some folks, but so recruitment is a challenge. Retirements are coming, and there'll be more coming in the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years. Experienced candidates, even finding planners. 10, 15 years ago, we would have 20 to 30 applications for a planner position, an associate planner, a senior planner, and now we're just not seeing particularly experienced candidates come out of schools, even though right down the street we have UMass and the landscape architect and regional planning department. We're just not seeing them churn out a lot of planners who really fit with what we need. I will say the trend in planning has gone towards sustainability and environmental and other specialties, and that is not exactly really what we need here in town. I'll be perfectly honest, salaries are not keeping up where they should be. We've lost a couple of people, and we're continuing to see competition in the region for salaries across the board that are higher, honestly. I think Rob, if you were here, would tell you that recruiting inspectors, one of the challenges is we're losing people to other communities, Agawam, West Springfield. The candidates just don't come our way because our salaries are not high enough, and some of the packages like take-home vehicles, for instance, is fairly common, is having a town or city vehicle to drive home with you and not use your personal vehicle. So retirements, having robust candidate pools and the like are really challenging, but we're doing the very best we can. As I said, the Nate's position is now out advertised. So Jeff Bagg and his team, his search committee, will be recruiting candidates and interviewing people in the coming months. But for the short term, we're going to be down a major position. So there's going to be a little slowdown in the productivity and what we can do. Why don't I turn it over to Stephanie for sustainability? I think the focus there was on Stephanie is a one staff department, and almost every year since this position was created and sustainability was taken out of conservation and it's a standalone department, council members and the public have asked, Stephanie, how much can you get done as one person? Stephanie does an amazing job, but she is just one person. So Stephanie, maybe you can say a little bit about that and the various grants you are bringing in and chasing out there to offset and supplement our capital funds, et cetera.
Sure. Thank you again. Thank you all. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to being a one-person show. But really, it isn't just me. And I think, as Dave mentioned earlier, referring to work that Nate Malloy has done, much of the work is very collaborative. So, I may be a driver, but I certainly don't do things, I'm not siloed to do them only by myself. So I really do rely on working with my colleagues on moving sustainability initiatives forward. I do secure grant funding fairly regularly from the Green Communities Program. We're in the process of applying for some funding right now for weatherization at the North Fire Station. I will say that because we've become a climate leader community, that particular pot of funding was reduced by half. because we're a climate leader community, and when we apply for climate leader community accelerator grant funding, that's a much bigger pot of funding that we can request. We will be doing that, but these things take stages, and maybe this is the part of being a one-person show that sometimes slows things down a bit, because I have to ensure that we secure the funding to get the engineering and design specifications that we need. And that requires technical assistance funding before we can then apply for the accelerator grant funding, which will then allow us to do the implementation of retrofitting various buildings from fossil fuels to electrification. So, there's a process, and that is something that does slow me down a bit. But I think, I will say, I think we are achieving a lot of our goals. And even though I am one person, I feel very confident that we are meeting the goals that we've had set out for us in terms of addressing some of the building projects and the transportation infrastructure in terms of EV charging stations and increasing the presence of those throughout the community. So a lot of what I'm requesting for this next budget cycle is to address those two particular sectors.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you both for being patiently waiting. And I see Sean's hand is up.
I just wanted to quickly acknowledge Stephanie. She does a great job bringing revenue into the town, either through grants. Another thing she does is she does a lot of the messy stuff that nobody else wants to do. And I'll give you a good example that's going to realize savings for the town. We have a solar array. We are part of a program with the state where we get a credit on our electric bills. Stephanie recently helped negotiate and really led the negotiation to essentially increase that credit by 150%. And we're going from like a penny to 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour credit. And that's for the next 20 plus years. We'll realize that on our electric bills. You don't see it quantified so much because it's kind of spread through all the different departments and all the different buildings, but the impact, is in the tens of thousands of dollars each year that we will see as a reduction in expenses. And it likely would not have happened without Stephanie leading the charge. So thank you, Stephanie.
And Stephanie, are you already working to make sure we're in the credit line for the new school when it opens with its solar array?
I haven't really been directly involved in that one, so
those are the smart credits, right?
Well, that solar, remember, I believe will directly power the school. That's different than the solar we have on like the landfill, which feeds the grid, but we don't use that solar. The solar at the elementary school will actually power the building.
I think, Sean, I think you should double check into it because I think
Is that not the case?
I'm not sure that's the case. I think
okay. No, I can clarify.
I think we might be giving it back to the grid and getting it offset, but double check.
No, I can follow up with Stephanie.
Kathy, yeah. So if I'd like to pause there. I'm watching the time.
Yeah.
Are there any questions on sustainability?
I don't. Well, let me see. Sam's hand is up, and we've got 7 minutes left if we're going to try to end at 5, Sam. So you're muted.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Dave and Stephanie. I don't have a question. I just wanted to make an observation that, in my time of being involved in the town, I'm just very impressed with the town's capacity to bring in grants. I've seen a great many of them through CPA, but there are many others. Stephanie referenced a few. And I don't know, how much gets brought. I know staff have to do multiple tasks. The departure of Nate is clearly going to be significant, but I just wonder, we may not have funding. Is it, despite budgetary concerns, is it worth bringing on another staff person for grants? If, the field is going to dry up with state and federal money, I know it's going to be a challenging situation. I'm just free flowing, but I'm very impressed. The planning department and all the town staff work incredibly hard. We've seen that in the council over this past week with new activity, and it's just great to see when the grants come in, because it's just extra. And so kudos to the staff.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
And Dave, I think what we'll do is we'll say you're going to come back.
Sure.
And then Stephanie, unless there's something else we forgot to ask you, you can avoid Tuesday with us when I see how many meetings you go to.
Yeah.
And
Kathy, would you mind if I wrap up on one point and then?
Sure, go ahead. And I'm just,
So this is a good stopping point because as I'm looking at the questions from Hickory Ridge, South Amherst School, VFW, and the list goes on and on, we will, as I said, we'll submit written comments to you all tomorrow, so you have them for the weekend and early next week. I think what I want to leave you with is just that broad range of projects that we're working on. And as I was thinking about this presentation, I was thinking about the clean energy bylaw, zoning changes that are going to come before the council undoubtedly later this year, downtown design standards. Sam mentioned CPA projects. Almost every CPA project comes through this functional area. When an applicant gets approved by you and the funding gets approved by the council, it's not the end of it. We then, staff, take over working with Sean's office to shepherd the contents, the products through, whether it's an improvement to a historic structure or a new ball field or whatever it might be. We are right there. Hickory Ridge continuing, South in the housing component, Hickory Ridge housing component, South Amherst School housing, VFW housing and supportive housing and sheltering, Wildwood School, and of course the big unknown right now is Hampshire College. So that's just 7 or 8 of the projects that we are going to be working on in the next year or two. And there are from time to time, I do get some concern sometimes. I know there is concern about how many projects we have on the tarmac, but we must keep the flow moving because that is part of what creates new growth in some of these categories. So we may have 6 or 7 projects to you, maybe to the public. They may be moving at a slower pace than you would like, but we continue to move those forward. So next Tuesday, we'll talk with you a little bit about when we think those projects are going to actually move toward construction, new housing, new downtown development, whatever it might be. So we are working, and next week I'll also talk a little bit about Bob Parent's role, because Bob Parent has been incredibly instrumental in a number of projects, but unfortunately for us, he was called away on some of the bigger projects. So these medium range projects in the last 2-3 years, he just hasn't had the bandwidth to help us with. He worked on the Jones, instrumental there, Amethyst School, critical there, track and field, critical there. But in fact, when we envisioned that role, that was not why we brought Bob on. There were these medium range projects. So anyway, he's been an incredible boost to all of us, and we need that position to remain. So we hope he stays with us for a couple of years to come. So more later on Tuesday. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. And with that, we have very little time. If everyone is willing, I would like to, we have attendees. I'd like to open it to people who have been patiently waiting for public comments. And Sean, I don't think I have, do I have the power to bring people in?
I just brought, I think you're co-host, but I just allowed Anne to speak.
Anne, you are with us.
Great. You can hear me?
Yes.
Great. So we are members of the intervention teams of the Amherst schools. There are 10 of us who signed this letter, and we're concerned about the data that was provided to the Finance Committee and the response for Amherst Public Schools RE information request. The information that the district document offers is incorrect about the reality of Amherst Elementary current staffing and student needs in math and reading intervention. Here, we're providing the committee with current and accurate data to help you to understand how cuts will adversely affect our programs. So we've attached spreadsheets, which you can't see right now. Highlighted areas of concern include the following. The current caseloads are listed inaccurately. Fort River is listed as having between 42 and 49 intervention students. In fact, between reading and math, we have a total school caseload of 108 students. Crocker Farm is listed as having a total of 14 to 17 students. In fact, they have a total school caseload of 70. The predicted caseloads are also inaccurate. The district's predicted caseload for next year significantly varies from actual caseloads based on the current intervention numbers and the district's proposed number of staff. The district has listed Amethyst Brook as having between 67 and 75 intervention slots, whereas the total slots based on May 2026 data is 195. The district has listed Crocker Farm as having between 14 and 17 intervention slots, whereas the total number of slots based on current figures will be approximately 70. On page 9 in the current column, the total current number of positions listed, 11.6 full-time equivalent, is also incorrect. There are 12.5 FTE intervention positions across the 3 elementary schools. In the proposed fiscal year 27 column, the district writes that they aim to cut 3 positions. Given that the first column is incorrect, this translates to 3.9 positions, which is a significant change from the 2.5 recommended cuts that were discussed in school committee budget meetings. On page 9, the third column lists a rationale for intervention reductions. The district writes that they're reducing positions in order to better balance caseloads across schools. Research on small group intervention, which is what we do, shows that reading group sizes must be kept between 1 and 4 students. Math groups can include up to 5. The district's intervention program follows the Research for Intervention RTI protocols, which state that teachers will provide individualized, up-to-the-minute scaffolding. The rationale of balancing caseloads does not make sense in a program designed explicitly to provide individualized instruction. Thank you so much for your attention. My letter is signed by 10 intervention teachers.
Thank you, Anne. And
Kathy, I
will-
have the letter too, and I can put it in the packet.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
This
So we
evening
can-
or tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any other people wishing to speak? Then I want to thank the committee for your patience and for your attention, including a voluminous amount of information that many people seem to have read before we met, which is great. So I am going to make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, don't mute yourself when you're seconding. Now, I'll call for a vote. Sam?
Aye.
Kathy, so yes. Jill?
Yes.
Anna?
Aye.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Lynn?
Aye.
Tom?
Yes.
And Mandy, you get to adjourn the town council.
If the finance is adjourned, I move to adjourn the town council. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll vote. Sam?
Aye.
Kathy?
Yes.
Counselor Breivik?
Yes.
Anna?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
Mandy is an aye. Counselor Cano Martin? Counselor Cano Martin is an absent at the time, so we are adjourned with a 6-0 vote.
And thank you very much for joining us. And again, if people have questions that came up, please get them to me and Sean, and we'll check our notes to feedback to the superintendent. So thank you all. We are adjourned at 5:03, which isn't bad considering.
Thank you, Kathy.